I'm sitting here in my living room in Cedar Falls, Missouri, on a Thursday afternoon with the golden autumn light coming through the lace curtains my daughter made for me last Christmas. The house is quiet, except for the old radio on the shelf, playing those classic country songs from when I was young. Patsy Cline's Crazy just finished, and now it's Jim Reeves with that smooth voice of his. On my lap, I have a shoebox. Not just any shoebox. This one's been sitting in the back of my closet for over 50 years, hidden behind my winter boots and the quilts my mother made before she passed. It's a Tom McCann shoebox, the brown cardboard faded to a pale tan, the corners soft and worn from being moved from house to house, closet to closet, always following me but never being opened. Until today. My hands are shaking a little as I lift the lid. Not from age. I'm 78, but I still have steady hands, thank the Lord. No, they're shaking because I know what's inside, and I know that once I open this box, once I start going through these memories, I'm going to have to face things I've spent a lifetime trying to forget. The first thing I see is a photograph, one of those old Polaroids from 1968, the colors all faded to that yellowish tint that old photos get. It's me at 16, standing in front of the high school gymnasium in my homecoming dress, a pale blue dress with a white Peter Pan collar that my mama had sewn for me. My hair's in one of those flip styles that all us girls wore back then, held in place with enough aquanet to survive a tornado. I'm smiling in the photo, but now, looking at it with all these years between us, I can see something in my eyes that I couldn't see then. A kind of wariness, a uncertainty. Like some part of me already knew that things weren't quite right, even if I couldn't put words to it yet. Next to the photo is a folded piece of paper, a note passed to me in Mrs. Henderson's English class. I unfold it carefully, the paper so old it threatens to tear along the creases. The handwriting is boyish, all capital letters. Evie, meet me by your locker after 6th period. Need to talk to you about something important. T.T. Tommy Whitfield. Just seeing that initial makes my chest tighten, even after all these years. Tommy Whitfield with his Letterman jacket and his easy smile and his way of making everyone in town think he hung the moon. Tommy Whitfield, who everyone said was going places, who had a football scholarship lined up, who came from the good family on Maple Street with the big White House and the manicured lawn. Tommy Whitfield who said he'd take it slow. But he didn't. I set the note aside and dig deeper into the box. There's a dried corsage, brown and brittle now, from the Valentine's Day dance sophomore year. A ticket stub from the drive-in movie theater that used to be out on Route 42 before they tore it down to build a strip mall. A church bulletin from Riverside Baptist, dated March 1968, with a prayer request circled in pencil. Pray for our youth, that they may walk in righteousness. And underneath it all, at the very bottom of the box, is a lace handkerchief. White lace, hand-tatted by my grandmother, with my initials, EMC for Evelyn Marie Carter, embroidered in one corner in pale pink thread. This handkerchief has seen more tears than anything else I own. I can still remember clutching it in my hand that night, wadding it up so tight, my fingernails left little half-moon marks in my palms. I pick it up now, and even after 50 years, I swear I can still smell the Shalimar perfume I used to wear. The perfume Tommy said he liked. The perfume I stopped wearing the day I left Cedar Falls and never wore again. My granddaughter Jenny is supposed to be here in about 20 minutes. She called me yesterday, and I could hear something in her voice. That same note of confusion and fear that I remember feeling at her age. She said she needed to talk to her grandma about boy stuff, said her mom wouldn't understand, but maybe I would. And I knew. Somehow I just knew that it was time to open this box. Time to stop hiding from this story I've carried for so long. Time to tell someone what really happened that spring of 1968 when I was 16 years old and thought I knew what love looked like. Because Jenny's got a boyfriend. She's been dating him for about 6 months now, a boy named Brandon from her college. And from the little she's told me, from the way her voice gets tight when she talks about him, from how she makes excuses for why she doesn't see her friends as much anymore, I recognize the signs. I know the pattern. I've lived it. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let my granddaughter go through what I went through. So I'm sitting here with this box open, with all these memories spread out around me, and I'm preparing to do something I haven't done in over 50 years. I'm preparing to tell the truth, the whole truth. Not the version I told my parents when I finally came home. Not the version I told my husband Jim when we first started dating and he asked about my past. Not even the version I told myself for years to make it easier to sleep at night. The real truth. The truth about Tommy Whitfield and his promises. The truth about what taking it slow really meant. The truth about how a small-town girl in 1968 could be pressured and manipulated and pushed past every boundary she had, all while everyone around her smiled and said what a nice couple they made. I hear a car door close outside. That'll be Jenny. I take a deep breath, smooth down my cardigan, and look at all these artifacts of my past spread out on the coffee table. He said he'd take it slow, I whisper to the empty room, testing out the words I'm about to say to my granddaughter. He said it over and over. Don't worry, Evie. We'll go at your pace. I respect you. I'd never push you into anything you're not ready for. I pause, and the weight of all those years presses down on me. But he didn't take it slow. He didn't respect me. And he pushed me every single day until I didn't even recognize myself anymore. The doorbell rings. I stand up, smoothing my skirt, and go to answer it. Through the door's window, I can see Jenny standing there, and even from here I can see her eyes are red from crying. Come in, honey, I say, opening the door wide. I've got something to show you, something I should have shown someone a long time ago. She comes in, gives me a tight hug, and I lead her to the living room where the shoebox and all its contents are waiting. What's all this, Grandma? I sit down on the sofa and pat the cushion next to me. This is a story I've never told anyone, not your mother, not even your grandfather, God rest his soul. But I'm going to tell you now because I think you need to hear it. She sits down, looking at the old photos and notes with curiosity. It took me over 50 years to understand that what happened to me wasn't my fault, I begin, my voice steady, now that I've made the decision. 50 years to stop blaming myself for believing him when he made promises he never intended to keep. I pick up that faded Polaroid of me in my homecoming dress. This was me at 16, and this is the story of the boy who said he'd take it slow, but didn't. Jenny picks up the photograph and studies it carefully, looking at the young girl I used to be. You were so pretty, Grandma. You look so innocent. I was innocent, maybe too innocent. I settle back into the sofa, and the memories start flooding back like they were waiting all these years for permission to surface. That was taken in October of 1967, right before homecoming. I was 16 years old and living in this town, this same town where you're sitting right now, though it looked a lot different back then. What was it like? Cedar Falls in the 60s? I smile, though it's bittersweet. It was a small town, honey, real small. Population maybe 3,000 if you counted all the farms around the outskirts. Everybody knew everybody. You couldn't sneeze without Mrs. Patterson at the post office knowing about it by lunchtime. I get up and go to the window, looking out at Main Street. That drugstore down there, Henderson's, it's a Walgreens now, but back then it was a real old-fashioned drugstore. Had a soda fountain with those spinning stools covered in red vinyl. Us kids would go there after school, order cherry Cokes for 15 cents, and the older kids would play songs on the jukebox. Elvis, Buddy Holly, Sam Cooke. That sounds kind of nice, actually. It was, in some ways, but it was also, I search for the right word, suffocating. In a town that small, there were so many rules, so many expectations, especially for girls. I come back to the sofa and pick up another photo. This one of me with 3 other girls, all of us in matching cheerleading sweaters. These were my friends, Sally Morrison, Beth Ann Tucker, and Dorothy Klein. We did everything together, cheering at football games, going to church youth group on Wednesday nights, studying for tests at each other's houses. You were a cheerleader? For 2 years, junior and senior year. It was a big deal back then. Not every girl made the squad. Your great-grandmother sewed my uniform for me because we couldn't afford to buy one from the school. I traced the image with my finger. We practiced every day after school in the gymnasium, doing those routines over and over until our legs ached. Jenny leans in closer. What were you like back then? I was good. I laugh a little at how simple that sounds. I mean, I was a good girl. That's what everyone called girls like me. I got decent grades, mostly B's, a few A's in English because I loved to read. I sang in the church choir every Sunday at Riverside Baptist. I helped my mama with the cooking and cleaning. I never talked back, never caused trouble. That sounds exhausting. It was the only way I knew how to be, because that's how girls were raised back then. I pick up a church bulletin from the box. See, honey, in the 60s, in a small town like this, there was a very specific way a girl was supposed to act. We wore dresses that came down to our knees, no exceptions. Even on the hottest summer days, we'd be wearing stockings and girdles and slips under those dresses. Girdles? Weren't you too young for that? Age didn't matter. If you were female and over 12, you wore a girdle to keep everything smooth and proper. That's what the magazines said. I shake my head. We couldn't wear pants to school. That was against the dress code. Couldn't show our shoulders. Couldn't wear too much makeup, but we had to wear enough to look put together. It was this impossible balance of looking pretty, but not too pretty, being feminine, but not too feminine. I stand up again, too restless to sit still with these memories. And the rules weren't just about how we looked. They were about how we acted. Girls were supposed to be polite, quiet, agreeable. We said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am to every adult. We didn't interrupt when men were talking. We didn't express strong opinions about politics or world events. That was men's business. But what about women's lib? Wasn't that happening in the 60s? Sure, in the big cities, in places like New York and San Francisco. But in Cedar Falls, Missouri? I laugh bitterly. The women's liberation movement might as well have been happening on Mars. Here, we were still being taught that a woman's place was supporting her husband and raising her children. That was the dream we were supposed to have. I pick up my old yearbook from the box, flip it open to a page with photos of different clubs. Look at this. Home Economics Club, Future Homemakers of America, Junior League Auxiliary. Those were the clubs for girls. The boys had Science Club, Debate Team, Future Farmers of America, where they learned about business and agriculture. That's so sexist. It was, but we didn't call it that then. We called it the natural order of things. I sit back down, the yearbook heavy in my lap. And the worst part? We were taught to trust boys, especially boys from good families, in a way that was dangerous. What do you mean? I mean, we were taught that boys knew better than us, that they were naturally smarter, naturally stronger, naturally more capable of making decisions, that if a boy from a respectable family took an interest in you, you should feel grateful. Lucky. I look at Jenny. We were taught to give boys the benefit of the doubt. Always. Even when they did something wrong? Especially then, because there was always an excuse, always a justification. I tick them off on my fingers. Boys will be boys. He didn't mean anything by it. He's just enthusiastic. He comes from such a good family, he couldn't possibly be bad. You must have misunderstood. You're being too sensitive. Jenny's face hardens. That's still what they say now. I know, honey, I know. I squeeze her hand. Some things haven't changed as much as we'd like to think. But back then, it was even more intense because we had no framework for understanding what was happening to us. We didn't have words like boundaries or consent or gaslighting. We just knew we felt uncomfortable, but we'd been taught that our feelings didn't matter as much as being polite. I pull out another photo, this one of the high school football team. This is where Tommy comes in. Tommy Whitfield, number 17, quarterback of the Cedar Falls Wildcats. Jenny takes the photo and finds him immediately. He's the one in the center, right? The one everyone's crowded around? That's him. Star quarterback, honor roll student, president of the senior class, son of Robert Whitfield, who owned the Ford dealership and was on the town council. I can still see his face so clearly. Sandy blonde hair, blue eyes, tall and broad-shouldered from all that football practice. And he had this smile, this easy, confident smile that made everyone trust him instantly. He was popular. More than popular. He was golden. The kind of boy that mothers pointed out to their daughters saying, "Now that's the kind of young man you should hope to marry someday." Teachers loved him. The pastor at our church loved him. The whole town thought he could do no wrong. And he noticed you. He noticed me in the spring of my sophomore year, March 1968. I close my eyes, remembering. I was at the soda fountain at Henderson's with my friends after school. We were sitting at our usual spot by the window, sharing a plate of French fries, probably gossiping about something completely trivial. And Tommy came in with some of his football buddies. What happened? He walked right up to our table, just stood there with that smile, and my friends all went silent because seniors never talked to sophomores unless they were dating. And he looked straight at me and said, "You're Evelyn Carter, right? From Mr. Wilson's history class?" I can still feel the butterflies I felt that day. I was so nervous I could barely speak. I just nodded, and he said, "I've been wanting to talk to you. You're real smart in that class, and pretty too, if you don't mind me saying." Then he asked if he could buy me a Coke sometime. What did you say? I said yes. Of course I said yes, because a boy like Tommy Whitfield asking out a girl like me? That didn't happen. I wasn't one of the popular girls. I wasn't a cheerleader yet. I was just ordinary. So when he picked me, I felt like I'd won the lottery. I opened my eyes and looked at Jenny. And that's exactly how he wanted me to feel. Like I was lucky. Like I should be grateful. Like I owed him something for choosing me. But you didn't know that then. No. All I knew was that the most popular boy in school had noticed me. And when he said he wanted to take things slow, that he respected me, that we'd go at my pace. I pick up that first note he wrote me. I believed every word. Because he seemed perfect. Because everyone told me he was perfect. My friends were jealous. My mama was thrilled. A Whitfield boy is interested in you. My daddy was suspicious at first, but Tommy won him over quick, showing up at our house all polite, calling him sir, asking permission for everything. I look at the shoebox full of memories. And that's how it started, with promises and politeness and everyone in town thinking we made such a nice couple, with me believing that I'd found something special, something safe. I turned to Jenny, my voice serious. But I want you to understand something important. The girl in that photo, that 16-year-old me, she wasn't stupid. She wasn't naive in a bad way. She was just a product of her time, raised in a culture that taught her to trust boys like Tommy Whitfield. And he took advantage of that. He took advantage of everything, and it happened so slowly, so carefully, that by the time I realized what was happening, I was already trapped. Jenny's looking at me with those wide eyes, waiting for me to continue. I pick up another item from the shoebox, a small pressed flower, brown and brittle now, between two pieces of wax paper. This was the first flower he ever gave me, a daisy. He picked it on our first date and said daisies reminded him of me, simple and pretty. I smile sadly. I thought that was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. Where did he take you on the first date? To the drive-in movie theater out on Route 42. Back then, that's what kids did on dates. We'd go to the drive-in, usually in groups at first. Tommy picked me up in his daddy's Chevrolet Impala, light blue with white interior. He opened the car door for me, helped me in like I was something precious. I can still smell the leather seats, still feel the nervousness. My mama stood on the porch watching us drive away, and she had this satisfied look on her face, like all her prayers had been answered. A Whitfield boy, she kept saying. Imagine that. What movie did you see? Guess who's coming to dinner? Though honestly, I barely watched it. I was too aware of Tommy sitting next to me, too conscious of every move I made. I set the flower down carefully. And that's when he said it the first time. The promise that would echo through the next 2 years of my life. What did he say? We were sitting there in the car, and he could tell I was nervous. I was sitting pressed against the passenger door, leaving as much space between us as possible. And he turned to me with that easy smile and said, "Hey, Evie, you seem real tense. I want you to know, I'm not like those other guys. I'm not going to rush you or pressure you into anything. We'll take it slow. Your pace, not mine. I respect you too much to do anything you're not ready for." Jenny nods slowly. That sounds actually good? That's exactly why it worked so well, because it did sound good. It sounded perfect. I leaned back. And he meant it, that first night. He didn't try to hold my hand, didn't try to kiss me, didn't even put his arm around me. He kept a respectful distance the whole time, and when he took me home, he walked me to the door, thanked me for going out with him, and said goodnight. So he was respectful at first. Very. For the first few weeks, he was the perfect gentleman. He'd ask permission before calling my house. He'd make plans days in advance and check with my parents first. When we went out, usually with other couples, he'd make sure I was comfortable, ask if I was having a good time, never push anything. I pull out a handful of notes from the box. He wrote me these little notes and left them in my locker at school. Look at this one. "Good morning, Evie. Hope you have a great day. Can't wait to see you at lunch. Remember, no pressure on anything. We're just getting to know each other. Your friend Tommy." "Your friend," Jenny repeats. "Not even your boyfriend." Right. He was so careful not to assume anything, not to put a label on us until I was ready. At least that's how he made it seem. I unfold another note. And this one, from a few weeks later. "Evie, I know some of the guys are moving fast with their girls, but I want you to know I'm different. I see a future with you, and that means building something real, something that lasts. We've got all the time in the world." That actually sounds really mature. It did, and that's what made it so effective. Because look at what he was doing. He was setting himself apart from other guys, positioning himself as the good one, the safe one, the one who respected me. He was building trust. I gathered the notes back together. And it worked. Within a month, I trusted him completely. When did you become official? 6 weeks after that first date. He asked me to go steady at the spring dance, got down on one knee in front of everyone in the gymnasium, held up his class ring on a chain, and asked if I'd wear it. I can still see the scene. Everyone was watching, clapping, cheering. My friends were squealing with excitement, and Tommy looked up at me with those blue eyes and said, "I'll take care of your heart, Evie. I promise." "And you said yes." Of course I said yes. How could I say no with the whole school watching? And besides, I didn't want to say no. I felt like Cinderella, like the prince had chosen me out of all the other girls. I shake my head at my younger self. I wore that ring on a chain around my neck every single day, slept in it, never took it off. It felt like proof that I mattered, that I was special. I stand up and walk to the mantel where I keep family photos. Behind one of them is a tarnished chain with a class ring still attached. I bring it back to show Jenny. "You kept it all these years?" "I kept everything, even the things that hurt to remember." I hold the ring up to the light. Cedar Falls High School, 1968. See his initials engraved inside? TW. Jenny takes it carefully, examining it. It's heavy. It felt heavy then too, but I thought that weight meant something, meant commitment, meant he was serious about me. I sit back down, and everyone in town reinforced that feeling. Suddenly, I wasn't just Evelyn Carter anymore. I was Tommy Whitfield's girl. People treated me differently. Teachers were nicer to me. Girls who'd never talked to me before wanted to be my friend. Even the ladies at church would smile at me and say things like, "Such a lovely young couple," or "I bet we'll be hearing wedding bells in a few years." They were already planning your wedding? That's how it worked. In a small town in the 60s, when a good boy from a good family started dating a decent girl, people assumed it was heading toward marriage, and I started assuming it too. I pick up another photo, this one of me and Tommy at the church picnic. My mama started making comments about hope chests and teaching me her recipes for when you have your own kitchen. My daddy started talking to Tommy about his plans after high school, treating him like a future son-in-law. That's a lot of pressure. It was enormous pressure, but I didn't see it as pressure then. I saw it as destiny, I guess. Like this was what was supposed to happen, what I was supposed to want. I look at Jenny, and Tommy encouraged all of it. He'd talk about our future like it was already decided. When we get married, he'd say, not if, always when. But you were only 16. 17 by then. He was 18, about to graduate. And in our world, that wasn't too young to be talking about marriage. Girls got engaged right out of high school all the time. Got married at 19 or 20. I sigh. And the whole time, he kept repeating that promise. Don't worry, Evie. We're taking it slow, building something solid. I respect you too much to rush anything. But he was rushing things, just not the way you expected. Exactly. I nod, glad she understands. He wasn't rushing physically, that came later. He was rushing everything else. He was rushing the relationship forward socially, emotionally, publicly. He was locking me in before I even realized what was happening. I pick up a church bulletin from May 1968. Look at this, the youth group newsletter. There's a section here about future couples in the church, and it lists me and Tommy. I didn't even know they were going to print this. But there it was, in black and white, for the whole congregation to see. Did that bother you? It should have. But I was too caught up in the fairy tale to notice the cage being built around me. I fold the bulletin carefully. And whenever I did feel a twinge of unease, whenever something felt like it was moving too fast, Tommy would sense it. He was good at reading me. And he'd say those magic words again. Hey, we're taking it slow, remember? No pressure. This is about building trust. So the promise became a weapon. It became a shield. A shield he could hide behind while he did whatever he wanted. Because how could I complain? How could I say anything was wrong when he kept promising he was respecting me? I look at Jenny intently. That's the genius of it. He said all the right words, so when his actions didn't match, I questioned myself instead of questioning him. When did his actions start not matching? Sooner than you'd think. I pull out my old diary from the shoebox, a small book with a blue cover and a tiny lock that stopped working after the first month. I wrote everything in here. Listen to this entry from June 1968, about 2 months into our relationship. Tommy got upset today because I wanted to spend Saturday with Sally instead of him. He said he understood, but he seemed really hurt. He said he thought I'd want to spend time with him since we don't get enough time together. I feel bad. Maybe I should cancel with Sally. You were already changing your plans for him. I was. And this entry from July. Tommy says he doesn't like it when I wear lipstick. Says I look pretty or natural. I guess he's right. He knows about these things better than me. And then this one from August. Had a weird feeling today when Tommy told everyone at the diner that we'd be going to state together in the fall. I hadn't decided about college yet, but everyone seemed so happy about it. I didn't want to say anything. I closed the diary. See how it was happening? Little by little, he was making decisions for me, shaping my life to fit his plans. But because he kept saying he respected me, because he kept promising we were taking it slow, I didn't see it as control. I saw it as love. When did you start to see the truth? Not for a long time. Too long. I look at all the items spread out from the shoebox. Because the truth is, he was very good at what he did, and I was very well trained to ignore my own instincts. I pick up my diary again, flip through the pages until I find what I'm looking for. Here. September 1968. School had just started back up. Tommy was a senior, I was a junior. Listen to this entry. I read aloud. Tommy picked me up for school today without asking first. Just showed up in the driveway honking. Mama thought it was sweet that he wanted to drive me, but I had plans to walk with Beth Ann and Sally like we always do. When I told him that, he got quiet. Said he thought I'd be happy to ride with him. Said most girls would appreciate having a boyfriend who wants to drive them to school. I ended up getting in the car. Beth Ann looked hurt when we drove past her. I need to call her later and explain. Jenny frowns. He was already isolating you from your friends. He was. But I didn't use that word then. I just thought he wanted to spend more time with me. Thought it was romantic. I flipped forward a few pages. And it escalated. Here, 2 weeks later. Tommy says he doesn't understand why I need to spend so much time with my girlfriends. Says we're just gossiping and wasting time. Says now that I have him, I don't need them as much. He might be right. Sally and Beth Ann do talk about silly things sometimes. Maybe I should focus more on my relationship with Tommy. He was rewriting how you saw your own friendships. Completely. And within a few months, I barely saw my friends anymore. Every time I made plans with them, Tommy would have something else planned for us. Or he'd show up anyway and join us, making it awkward. Or he'd get that hurt look on his face and say something like, "I thought you wanted to spend time with me. I guess I was wrong about how you felt." I set the diary down. That hurt look was his weapon. He'd use it every time I did something he didn't like, and I'd feel so guilty that I'd change my behavior to avoid seeing it again. Manipulation. Pure manipulation, but disguised as sensitivity, as deep feeling. I stand up and pace a little, the memories making me restless. And it wasn't just my friendships. He started having opinions about everything. What I wore, where I went, who I talked to, what I did with my free time. Like what? Well, I'd always loved reading. Used to spend hours at the library every week, checking out books, reading on the porch swing at home. Then one day, Tommy saw me reading To Kill a Mockingbird for English class and said, "You're always got your nose in a book. Don't you think that's kind of antisocial? People are going to think you're stuck up." Jenny's mouth drops open. "He criticized you for reading?" "For reading too much," he said. "He told me I should be more social, more engaged with the world around me, more focused on our relationship." I laugh bitterly. So I started reading less. Started telling Mrs. Patterson at the library that I was too busy for new books. And Tommy would praise me for being more present and more fun to be around. He was reshaping who you were. Exactly. And I let him because every time he criticized something about me, he'd couch it in concern or helpfulness. I'm only telling you this because I care about you. I want you to be the best version of yourself. I'm trying to help you. How do you argue with that? I sit back down, suddenly tired. Then there was what I wore. I had this yellow dress that I loved. My mama had made it for me, with little white flowers embroidered on the collar. One Sunday, I wore it to church, and Tommy pulled me aside after service and said, "That dress is a little tight, don't you think? Shows too much of your figure. You don't want people getting the wrong idea about you." What did you do? I never wore it again. Stuffed it in the back of my closet because I didn't want Tommy to think I looked inappropriate. Didn't want him to worry about other boys looking at me. I shake my head. And my mama noticed, asked why I wasn't wearing the dress she'd worked so hard on. I made up some excuse about it not fitting right. Couldn't tell her the truth, that my boyfriend thought it was too revealing. Did it stop there? No, it never stops there with men like Tommy. It just keeps expanding. I pull out another note from the box. Look at this. He wrote this to me in October. "Evie, I saw you talking to Mark Stevens after algebra class today. I know you were probably just being friendly, but it made me uncomfortable. Mark has a reputation, and I don't want people thinking you're the kind of girl who flirts with other guys. Maybe just avoid him from now on. Love, Tommy." He was controlling who you could talk to. And I thought it was because he loved me so much. Thought it meant he cared. I crumple the note slightly in my hand. So I started avoiding Mark Stevens, even though we'd been friends since elementary school. Started avoiding any boy who Tommy decided was inappropriate for me to associate with, which eventually meant avoiding almost every boy at school except the ones Tommy approved of. Jenny's getting angry now. I can see it in her face. And people didn't notice this was happening. Oh, they noticed. They just thought it was sweet. Tommy's so protective of you, they'd say. He really cares about his reputation and yours. My own mother told me I was lucky to have a boyfriend who was so concerned about my virtue. I laugh without humor. Virtue. That was the magic word. As long as Tommy could frame his control as protecting my virtue, protecting my reputation, everyone supported it. What about your dad? My daddy. I pause, remembering. He liked Tommy well enough at first. Thought he was a good, solid boy from a good family. But he started noticing things, started seeing that I wasn't as happy, wasn't as lively. One night at dinner, maybe November of that year, he said, "Evie, you seem different lately. You okay?" "Did you tell him?" I tried to. Said, "I don't know, Daddy. Sometimes I feel like Tommy gets upset with me a lot, like I'm always doing something wrong." And you know what my daddy said? I look at Jenny. He said, "Well, honey, that's what relationships are. Compromise, growing, learning to see yourself through someone else's eyes. Tommy's a good boy. If he's pointing things out, maybe you should listen." Even your dad sided with him. Everyone sided with him, because Tommy was smart about it. He never yelled at me in public, never said anything harsh where people could hear. In front of others, he was the perfect boyfriend, attentive, polite, affectionate in that wholesome, appropriate way. It was only when we were alone that the criticism came out, the control, the subtle threats. Threats? Not physical threats. Not then, but emotional ones. I pick up the diary again. Here, December 1968. Tommy said today that if I really loved him, I'd want to spend New Year's Eve with him instead of at Beth Ann's party. Said that's what couples do, prioritize each other. Said if I chose the party over him, he'd know where I really stood. I told Beth Ann I couldn't come to her party. She seemed hurt, but Tommy's right. If we're serious, I need to act like it. He was making you prove your love constantly, constantly. And the bar kept moving. It was never enough. I closed the diary. By Christmas, I'd lost most of my friendships. I dressed the way Tommy wanted me to dress. I spent my time how Tommy wanted me to spend it. I was becoming a shadow of who I'd been. Did you notice? I noticed I was unhappy. I noticed I felt anxious all the time, like I was walking on eggshells trying not to upset him. But I'd been so conditioned to think that relationships required sacrifice, that being a good girlfriend meant being accommodating, that I thought this was normal. I thought this was what love felt like. I look at Jenny seriously. And here's the terrible thing. Through all of this, Tommy kept saying those magic words. "We're taking it slow, Evie, building something real. I respect you." He'd say it after every criticism, every boundary he pushed, every freedom he took away. Like those words were a get-out-of-jail-free card that erased everything else. But they didn't match his actions. They didn't match his actions at all. But I kept believing the words because I wanted to believe them. Because if I stopped believing them, I'd have to admit that I'd made a terrible mistake, that the prince was actually a prison guard. When did you start to really see it? Not until it was almost too late. I gather up the photos and notes, my hands shaking slightly. Because what I've told you so far, the isolation, the control, the criticism, that was just the foundation. That was him setting up the cage. The real nightmare didn't start until the spring of 1969. What happened in the spring? I meet her eyes. That's when Tommy decided we'd been taking it slow long enough. That's when he decided it was time to collect on all those promises I supposedly owed him. That's when I learned that "I respect you" from a boy like Tommy Whitfield doesn't mean anything at all. I get up and walk to the window, looking out at the street where nothing much has changed in 50 years. It was April 1969, a Friday night. I remember because there was a dance at the school that weekend, and all week I'd been looking forward to it. What happened? Tommy told me he'd made other plans for us, said the dance was childish, that we were beyond that now, said he'd arranged something special, just the two of us. I turned back to face Jenny. He picked me up at 7, told my parents we were going to the movies and then to the diner with some friends. My mama was so trusting. She just smiled and said, "Have fun, you two." I sit back down, and this part is harder to tell. But we didn't go to the movies. He drove out past the edge of town, out to Miller's Lake where kids went to park. I'd never been there before. Nice girls didn't go to Miller's Lake unless they were serious with someone. And when I realized where we were going, I got nervous. "Did you say something?" I said, "Tommy, I thought we were going to the movies." And he said, "Come on, Evie. We've been dating for over a year. Don't you think it's time we had some real privacy? Time we stopped acting like kids?" His voice had this edge to it I hadn't heard before. Not angry exactly, but impatient. I pick up the handkerchief from the box, the one I clutched that night. He parked under the trees by the water. It was dark except for the moonlight, and he turned off the engine and just looked at me. Then he said, "I've been so patient with you, so respectful, more than any other guy would have been. Don't you think I deserve something for that?" Jenny's face goes pale. "Oh no." I didn't understand at first. I said, "Deserve what?" And he laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. It was bitter. He said, "What do you think, Evie? We've been together for a year. A year. Most girls we'd be closer by now. But I respected your boundaries. I took it slow like you wanted. But there's slow and then there's ridiculous." My hands are shaking now, just like they shook that night. I said, "Tommy, I appreciate that. I do. But I'm not ready I want to wait until marriage." That's what we'd been taught, you understand? Wait until marriage. That was the rule, the expectation. And I thought Tommy understood that. But he didn't care. He said, "Marriage? Evie, we're practically engaged. Everyone knows we're getting married after I finish college. What difference does a piece of paper make?" And then he moved closer to me, put his arm around my shoulders. I tried to move toward the door, but he held me tighter, said, "Where are you going? I thought you loved me." I have to stop for a moment, compose myself. Jenny reaches over and holds my hand. I said I did love him, and he said, "Then show me. Stop being such a child. Stop acting like you're afraid of me." And I said I wasn't afraid, but I was. I was terrified because I'd never seen him like this before. The mask had slipped. "What did you do?" I tried to explain, tried to reason with him, said, "You told me we'd take it slow. You promised." And you know what he said? I look at Jenny. He said, "And we did take it slow. A year is slow. I've been patient. I've waited. I've respected you. But now it's time for you to respect me, to respect what I need." He was turning it around on you. Completely. Making it seem like I was the one breaking promises, like I was the one being disrespectful. I wiped my eyes. And then he started kissing me. Not gentle like he usually did, but hard, demanding. His hands were everywhere, pulling at my clothes. I kept saying no, kept pushing him away, but he was so much stronger than me. Jenny's crying now too. "Grandma." He didn't go all the way, but only because I fought hard enough that he got frustrated. He pulled back finally and said, "What's wrong with you? You act like I'm some kind of monster. I'm your boyfriend. This is what people in love do." And I was crying by then, my dress torn at the collar, my lipstick smeared. I felt dirty, ashamed, like I'd done something wrong. But you hadn't. I know that now. But then, I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I was being a child. Maybe I was being unfair to him. I shake my head. He drove me home in silence. Before I got out of the car, he grabbed my arm, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to make me look at him. And he said, "Don't tell anyone about this. They won't understand. They'll think you led me on. And you did, you know. A year of dating and nothing? What did you expect?" He threatened you. He didn't have to threaten explicitly. I knew what he meant. If I told anyone, he'd make it my fault. He'd tell everyone I'd been leading him on, that I was a tease, that I'd wanted it, but then changed my mind. And in 1969, in Cedar Falls, Missouri, people would believe him. They'd believe the star quarterback from the good family over some girl who'd gotten herself into trouble. I stand up, needing to move. I went inside that night and my mama was still up, reading her Bible in the living room. She looked up and said, "How was the movie?" And I said, "Fine." She looked at me closer and said, "Your collar's torn, honey. What happened?" And I made up some lie about catching it on the car door. You couldn't tell her. How could I? If I told her what Tommy had done, I'd have to admit I'd gone to Miller's Lake with him. I'd have to admit what had happened there. And even though I'd said no, even though I'd fought him off, I knew there'd be questions. What were you wearing? Why did you go there with him? Didn't you know what boys expect when you go to a place like that? I sit back down heavily. So I kept quiet. Went to my room, scrubbed myself in the bathroom until my skin was raw, and cried into my pillow so no one would hear. And the next day, Tommy called like nothing had happened. Said, "Hey, Evie, about last night, I'm sorry I got frustrated, but you understand, right? I love you so much. Sometimes it's hard to control myself. That's how much you affect me." He apologized but made it about you. Made it seem like his behavior was my fault. Like I was so irresistible that I made him lose control. I pull out another diary entry. I wrote this the next day. Tommy apologized for getting upset. He says it's because he loves me so much. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe I need to think about what he needs too. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to lose him. Jenny shakes her head in disbelief. You were blaming yourself. Completely. And it got worse. Because after that night, Tommy felt like he had permission. Like he'd crossed a line and gotten away with it, so he could keep crossing lines. I flipped through the diary. Every time we were alone after that, he'd push a little further. And every time I resisted, he'd use the same tactics. I've been so patient. If you really loved me, what did you expect? This is normal for couples our age. And he kept saying he was taking it slow. Always. That phrase became meaningless, but he kept using it like a shield. I'm taking it slow, aren't I? I could be doing so much more. I could be like other guys who just take what they want. But I respect you. I closed the diary. But it wasn't respect. It was coercion. It was manipulation. It was pressure wrapped up in words that sounded good but meant nothing. When did it stop? It didn't stop. It escalated. By May, Tommy was telling people we were engaged even though he'd never actually proposed. Was making plans for our future without asking me. Was talking about me dropping out of school to work while he finished college, about how many kids we'd have, about where we'd live. And every time I tried to slow down, tried to say, "Wait, I want to finish school," or "I'm not ready for this," he'd get that hurt look. I meet Jenny's eyes. And then he'd say, "After everything I've done for you, after how patient I've been, after how much I've respected you, this is how you repay me. By backing out now?" Like I owed him my entire future because he'd been patient for a year. He wasn't taking it slow. He was running right over everything you wanted. That's exactly right. He said he'd take it slow, but what he really meant was, I'll take it at whatever pace I decide, and I'll keep telling you it's slow to keep you compliant. The promise was a lie from the beginning. Or maybe it was true for the first month, and then he decided he'd been patient long enough, and the promise didn't matter anymore. How did you get away from him? I almost didn't. I pick up the handkerchief again, this time holding it tight. Because by that point, everyone in town saw us as a done deal. Our families were making wedding plans. The church ladies were talking about bridal showers. I felt trapped in a future I'd never actually chosen, but couldn't figure out how to escape. But you did escape. Eventually. But it took something drastic to make me see that staying was worse than leaving. The Sunday after that night at Miller's Lake, I sat in church next to Tommy like nothing had happened, I say, staring at an old church bulletin from the shoebox. He held my hand during the service, put his arm around me during the hymns, and everyone smiled at us like we were the perfect young couple. I wanted to scream. "Did anyone notice you weren't okay?" My mama noticed I was quiet. After church, while we were having Sunday dinner, she said, "Evie, you've barely touched your pot roast. You feeling all right?" And I almost told her. The words were right there in my throat. I swallow hard at the memory. But then my daddy said, "She's probably just lovesick. That's what happens when girls get serious about a boy." And everyone laughed. Jenny shakes her head. They couldn't see it. Or they didn't want to see it, because Tommy Whitfield, being a good boy, was more comfortable than the alternative. I pick up another item from the box, a newspaper clipping. Look at this. Local section of the Cedar Falls Gazette from May 1969. Local couple, featured Thomas Whitfield Jr. and Miss Evelyn Carter, both students at Cedar Falls High School, have announced their intention to marry following Mr. Whitfield's graduation from State University. The couple has been courting for over a year and are well known in the community for their Christian values and commitment to family. They announced your engagement without asking you? Tommy's mother submitted it to the paper. I found out when Mrs. Henderson at the drugstore congratulated me during my shift there. She said, "I saw the announcement in the paper. How exciting." And I just stood there with a frozen smile, saying thank you, while inside I was dying. I set the clipping down. When I confronted Tommy about it later, he said, "Well, we are getting married, aren't we? Everyone knows it. Why not make it official?" And when I said I thought he should have asked me first, he said, "I did ask you. Remember at Miller's Lake? I told you we were practically engaged. You didn't say no." Because saying no wasn't safe. Exactly, but he twisted it to make it seem like I'd agreed. I stand and pace again, the memories making me agitated. And then the whole town got involved. The church ladies started planning a bridal shower. Tommy's mother kept calling my mama to discuss wedding details. Mrs. Patterson at the library asked if I'd registered anywhere for gifts yet. I felt like I was in a runaway train and couldn't figure out how to jump off. "Did you try to talk to your friends?" I tried to talk to Beth Ann. We'd been best friends since 3rd grade, even though I'd barely seen her in months because of Tommy. I pull out a photo of me and Beth Ann from years earlier, both of us with missing teeth and pigtails. I called her one night when Tommy was at baseball practice, asked if I could come over. She sounded surprised but said yes. "What did you tell her?" I said, "Beth Ann, I don't think I want to marry Tommy. I don't think I even want to be with him anymore. He's not who I thought he was." And you know what she said? I look at Jenny. She said, "Evie, you're just getting cold feet. Every girl gets nervous before marriage. Tommy's perfect. You're so lucky. Half the girls in school would kill to be in your position." She didn't believe you. She thought I was being dramatic, thought I had pre-wedding jitters, even though we hadn't even set a date yet. I sit back down. I tried to explain more, said, "He pressures me, makes me uncomfortable. I don't feel like myself anymore." And Beth Ann said, "Well, that's what happens when you grow up. You change. You become a wife instead of just a girl. It's supposed to feel different." She'd been taught the same things you had. We all had. That discomfort meant growth, that losing yourself meant becoming mature, that giving up who you were meant becoming a good wife. I shake my head. So I left Beth Ann's house feeling more alone than ever. If my best friend couldn't understand, who would? What about teachers? Wasn't there anyone at school? There was one teacher, Mrs. Morrison, my English teacher. She'd always been kind to me, had encouraged my reading and writing. One day she kept me after class and said, "Evelyn, you seem different this year, less engaged. Is everything all right at home?" I remember that moment so clearly, and I said, without thinking, "It's not home, it's Tommy." And she got very still and said, "What about Tommy?" And I almost told her everything, almost poured out the whole story right there. "But you didn't?" Because before I could, she said, "If he's pressuring you about your future, about college, you need to stand up for yourself. Young women today have options. You don't have to just be someone's wife." And I realized she thought I was talking about career stuff. She didn't understand I was talking about everything else. I pick up my old class schedule. So I said, "It's complicated." And she said, "Well, he's a good boy from what I hear. I'm sure you two will work it out. Just don't give up on your education entirely. Promise me that." And I promised, even though I had no idea how I'd keep that promise. The adults were all failing you. Not on purpose. They just couldn't imagine that Tommy Whitfield could be anything other than what he appeared to be. Because his family was respected, because he was successful, because he said all the right things in public, because he went to church every Sunday. I stand up and go to the window again. There was this moment, this one moment where I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would help. What happened? It was at youth group. Wednesday night in June. Pastor Reynolds was teaching about Christian relationships, about how men should treat women with respect and honor. And he said, "A godly man listens to his future wife. He values her voice. He never forces or coerces. He leads with gentleness." I turned to face Jenny. And I caught Pastor Reynolds' eye, and I must have had such a desperate look on my face because he paused, asked if I had a question. "Did you ask?" I said, "Pastor Reynolds, what if a boy says he's being respectful, but his actions don't match his words? How do you know the difference between godly leadership and just control?" And the room went completely silent. Everyone was looking at me, including Tommy, who'd driven me there. My voice gets quiet. And Pastor Reynolds said, "Well, Evelyn, sometimes young ladies misunderstand what godly leadership looks like. Sometimes what feels like control is actually a man trying to guide and protect. You have to trust that if he's a Christian man from a good family, his intentions are pure. Perhaps you're being too sensitive." He blamed you. He told me to trust more, to be less sensitive, to assume good intentions. I feel the old anger rising. And after youth group, Tommy pulled me aside and said, "What was that question about? Are you trying to embarrass me in front of everyone? Make me look bad?" And I apologized. I actually apologized to him for asking for help. Because he made you feel like you'd done something wrong. Always. Every time I tried to reach out, every time I tried to tell someone, he'd find out and make me feel guilty for it. He'd say, "Don't you trust me? Don't you love me? Why are you talking about our private business with other people?" I sit back down, exhausted. And the community reinforced it. Everyone kept telling me how lucky I was, how perfect we were together, how I should be grateful. I pull out a greeting card from the box. This is from Tommy's mother. She gave it to me in July. It's a card about being a good Christian wife. Inside she wrote, "Dear Evelyn, I'm so pleased Tommy has chosen you. Remember that a wife's role is to submit to her husband's leadership with grace and trust. I know you'll make him very happy. Welcome to the family." "Submit with grace and trust," Jenny repeats with disgust. That was the message everywhere. At church, from my parents, from Tommy's parents, from the ladies in town. Submit, trust. Don't question. Be grateful. Make him happy. I look at the card. And if you weren't happy, if you were scared, if you felt trapped, well, that was your problem. You were being difficult, immature, ungrateful. Did your mother did she suspect? She noticed I'd lost weight, noticed I wasn't sleeping well. But when she asked, I'd make excuses. And she'd say things like, "Well, planning a future is stressful, but you'll settle into it." That's what I did with your father. The first year of marriage is always hard, but you learn. I look at Jenny. She was preparing me to endure, not encouraging me to escape. "What about your dad?" "My daddy," I sigh. One night in August, Tommy had come over for dinner and left early, said he had to help his father with something. After he left, my daddy said, "Evie, that boy treating you right?" And my heart jumped because I thought maybe, finally, someone was seeing it. "What did you say?" I said, "Daddy, sometimes I feel like he doesn't listen to me, like what I want doesn't matter." And my daddy was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "Well, baby girl, that's what it means to be in a relationship with a strong man. He makes decisions. You support them. That's how your mama and I do it, and we've been married 25 years. You'll get used to it." Tears are streaming down my face now. He thought he was giving me good advice, thought he was preparing me for marriage, didn't realize he was telling me to accept abuse. Everyone failed you. Everyone chose the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth. It was easier to believe Tommy was perfect than to acknowledge that the system that produced him was broken, that the way we taught boys to lead and girls to follow was dangerous, that respect and submission aren't the same thing. I wipe my eyes and look at Jenny with intensity. That's why I'm telling you this story now, because the same thing is still happening. Women are still being told to give men the benefit of the doubt, still being told they're too sensitive when they complain, still being asked, "But what did you do to provoke him?" Still being blamed for men's bad behavior. When did you finally break? September 1969. The night everything changed. The night I realized that staying meant dying, maybe not physically, but dying in every way that mattered. It was a Saturday night in September, the first game of Tommy's senior football season. I pull out a game program from the box, the paper yellowed and fragile. Cedar Falls Wildcats versus the Jefferson County Bears. Tommy was quarterback, and everyone expected him to have a great season. Scouts from State University were supposed to be there. "Did you go to the game?" Of course I went. I was expected to be there, wearing his Letterman jacket over my dress, sitting in the front row of the bleachers with the other players' girlfriends, being the supportive future wife. I traced the program with my finger. Tommy played well that night. 3 touchdowns. The crowd went wild. After the game, everyone was celebrating, planning to go to the diner downtown like we always did after wins. But something happened. Tommy found me after the game, still in his uniform, sweaty and pumped up from the win. He said, "Change of plans. Skip the diner. I want to celebrate with just you." And I said I thought we were going with everyone else. He got that look, that irritated look I'd learned to fear. Said, "Evie, I just won us the game. Can't you do this one thing for me?" I stand up, too agitated to sit. So I told my friends I wasn't feeling well, made excuses, and got in Tommy's car. But instead of taking me home like he'd told my parents he would, he drove out to his family's hunting cabin about 15 miles outside town. "Oh no." I said, "Tommy, where are we going?" And he said, "Somewhere private. Somewhere we can finally stop pretending." And my stomach dropped because I knew what he meant. I wrapped my arms around myself. I said, "I want to go home. Take me home." And he said, "We'll go home later. First we're going to talk." But he didn't want to talk. No. When we got to the cabin, it was clear he'd planned this. There were blankets laid out, candles, a bottle of something his daddy kept in the liquor cabinet. He'd prepared a whole seduction scene. I closed my eyes, and I said, "Tommy, I'm not comfortable with this. Please take me home." And he exploded. Jenny's hands are clenched into fists. He yelled, really yelled, for the first time, said, "Not comfortable? Not comfortable? I've been nothing but patient with you for 18 months. 18 months of taking it slow, of respecting your boundaries, of being the perfect gentleman while you act like a scared little girl. When is it enough, Evie? When do I get something back for all that patience?" He felt entitled, completely entitled, like my body was payment owed for his good behavior, like respect was a transaction and I'd racked up a debt. I opened my eyes, looking at Jenny. I tried to reason with him, said, "We can wait until marriage. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what the church says." And he laughed. actually laughed, said, "The church. You think anyone actually waits anymore? You think your precious church ladies don't know what really goes on? They just pretend to be shocked. Everyone knows engaged couples do this." "What did you do?" I tried to leave, tried to walk out of the cabin, but he grabbed my arm, hard this time, hard enough to bruise, pulled me back inside and said, "You're not leaving until we settle this, until you stop acting like I'm some kind of monster for wanting what every other guy gets from his girlfriend." I sit back down, my legs weak, and then he started listing everything. Everything he'd done for me, everything he'd sacrificed, everything he'd put up with. He said, "I drive you everywhere. I take you to nice places. I buy you things. I defend you when guys say things about you. I chose you when I could have had anyone, and this is how you repay me? By acting like I'm attacking you when I try to get close to my own future wife?" He was keeping score. Of everything. Every ride in his car. Every hamburger at the diner. Every compliment in front of his friends. It had all been currency, and now he wanted to cash in. I pick up the handkerchief again. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "If you walk out of here tonight, everyone's going to know. I'll tell them you've been leading me on for a year and a half. I'll tell them what really happens when we're alone, that you're not the innocent little church girl everyone thinks you are." He threatened to lie about you. He threatened to destroy my reputation. And in 1969 in Cedar Falls, a girl's reputation was everything. If Tommy told people I'd been inappropriate with him, no one would question it. They'd assume I was easy, loose, a bad girl pretending to be good. My family would be humiliated. The church would judge me. I'd be ruined. "What did you say?" I said, "That's a lie. You know that's a lie." And he smiled, this cold smile that made him look like a stranger, said, "Doesn't matter if it's true. People will believe me. I'm Tommy Whitfield. You're nobody. Who do you think they'll side with?" I have to stop for a moment, the memory overwhelming. And he was right. I knew he was right. He had all the power, the social power, the family power, the gender power, and I had nothing. "But you didn't give in." I almost did. I was so scared, so trapped, that I almost just gave up. Let him do whatever he wanted because fighting seemed impossible. I look at Jenny. But then something happened. Something clicked in my brain. And I realized that if I gave in now, it would never stop. He'd own me completely. For the rest of my life, I'd be his property, doing whatever he demanded, living in fear of his threats. "So what did you do?" I said something I'd never said to him before. I looked him in the eye and said, "No. My answer is no. And if you don't take me home right now, I'll walk home. I'll walk 15 miles in the dark, and when I get there, I'll tell everyone exactly what you tried to do." You called his bluff. I didn't think I was bluffing. I meant it. I was prepared to walk 15 miles down a dark country road rather than stay in that cabin with him one more minute. I stand up again, and he saw it in my face, saw that I was serious, and he got so angry, angrier than I'd ever seen anyone. Started yelling, calling me names I'd never heard him use before, frigid, tease, prude, said I'd wasted his time, that he should have dumped me months ago, that I was lucky anyone wanted me at all. "How did you get home?" He drove me, but not before telling me exactly what was going to happen. He said, "This is over. We're done. And everyone's going to know it's your fault. I'm going to tell them you had a breakdown, that you couldn't handle the pressure of being with someone like me, that you're unstable. And they'll believe it because you've been acting weird for months. Everyone's noticed." I sit back down heavily. And on the drive back he kept talking, kept threatening, said his mother would tell the church ladies what really happened, said his friends would spread rumors, said my family would be so embarrassed they'd wish I'd never been born. By the time he dropped me off at home, I was shaking so hard I could barely walk. "Did you tell your parents?" I went inside and my parents were in the living room watching television. My mama looked up and said, "You're home early. Where's Tommy?" And I said, "We broke up." Just like that. We broke up. What did they say? My daddy turned off the TV. Mama stood up, looking worried. She said, "What do you mean you broke up? What happened?" And I said, "He wanted things I wasn't ready to give, so I said no." And he got angry. I didn't tell them everything, couldn't tell them everything, but I told them enough. Did they support you? I laughed bitterly. My daddy said, "Evie, relationships take compromise. Maybe you were being too rigid. Tommy's a good boy." And my mama said, "Oh, honey, you can fix this. Just apologize to him tomorrow. Tell him you were nervous. Boys understand that." They wanted you to apologize. They wanted me to go back to him, to fix it, to make it work. Because breaking up with Tommy Whitfield meant social consequences for the whole family. I look at the shoebox, at all these artifacts of pain. And that's when I knew. I knew I couldn't stay in Cedar Falls. Couldn't stay in that house. Couldn't stay anywhere near Tommy or his family or the people who would always take his side over mine. So you ran. So I ran. But not right away. First, I had to endure the aftermath, because Tommy did exactly what he promised. By Monday morning, everyone at school knew we'd broken up, and they all knew it was my fault. What did people say? They said I'd had a breakdown, that I was mentally unstable, that I couldn't handle the pressure of dating someone so popular. Tommy's friends spread rumors that I'd been clingy and jealous and impossible to please. Girls who'd been friendly to me when I was Tommy's girlfriend suddenly turned cold. Teachers looked at me with pity. And Tommy? Tommy played the victim perfectly, walked around school looking sad and noble, accepting everyone's sympathy. "I tried so hard with her," I heard him tell someone. "But she's got some issues she needs to work through. I hope she gets help." I clench my fists. He made himself look like a saint, and me look crazy. And it worked. "How long did you stay?" 2 more weeks. 2 weeks of hell, of being whispered about, of being ostracized, of watching Tommy start flirting with other girls while I was labeled the unstable ex-girlfriend. I pick up the handkerchief one more time. And then, on a Sunday night after everyone had gone to bed, I packed a small bag, just like I told you before. 1 dress, 1 pair of shoes, my diary, and a photograph of my mama from before she got hard. And you left. And I left. Climbed out my bedroom window, walked to the bus station, and bought a ticket to Nashville with the money I'd been saving from my job at the drugstore. Left a note on my pillow that said, "I'm sorry. I can't stay. Don't look for me." Did they look for you? For a while, but not as hard as you might think. I remember every single detail of that night, I say, staring at the small canvas bag I pull from the back of my closet, the same bag I carried out of Cedar Falls 56 years ago. It was September 21st, 1969, a Sunday night. I'd gone to church that morning like always, sat through Pastor Reynolds preaching about forgiveness and reconciliation, watched Tommy sit 3 rows ahead with his family looking wounded and noble. Jenny touches the bag gently. "You kept this?" I kept everything. Couldn't throw it away because it represented the night I saved my own life. I unzip it slowly. Inside here, I had 1 church dress, a green cotton dress my mama had made me, 1 pair of shoes, brown flats that were already wearing thin, a change of underwear, 3 pairs of socks, and this. I pull out a small notebook with a blue cover, water-stained and worn. My diary. I couldn't leave it behind because it had the truth in it. Everything I'd been too afraid to say out loud was written in here. I was terrified Tommy or his family would find it if I left it in my room. "What else did you take?" $43. That's all I had saved from 6 months working at Henderson's drugstore on Saturdays. $3 an hour, and I'd managed to save $43. I shake my head. I also took this. I pull out a photograph, the edges soft from handling. It's my mama, young, maybe 25, standing in a field of wildflowers with a genuine smile on her face. This was taken before she had kids, before life got hard, before she learned to accept things she shouldn't have accepted. I took it to remember that she used to be different, used to be happy. What time did you leave? Around 2 in the morning. I'd waited until I heard my daddy's snoring, heard the house settle into that deep quiet that only comes in the middle of the night. I closed my eyes, remembering. I'd left a note on my pillow. It said, "Mama and Daddy, I'm sorry, but I can't stay. Tommy isn't who you think he is, and this town isn't safe for me anymore. Don't try to find me. I'll be okay. I love you. Evie." Were you scared? Terrified. I'd never been anywhere alone. Never been outside Cedar Falls except for one trip to St. Louis when I was 12. But I knew staying was worse than leaving. I opened my eyes. I climbed out my bedroom window, the same window I used to sit by and dream about my future. Dropped down onto the roof of the back porch, then climbed down the trellis my daddy had built for Mama's climbing roses. Did anyone see you? The whole town was asleep. Cedar Falls rolls up the sidewalks at 9 o'clock on weeknights, 8 on Sundays. The streets were empty except for a few dogs barking in the distance. I can still feel the fear. I walked through town carrying that bag, jumping at every sound, sure someone would spot me and drag me back. Where was the bus station? Downtown, next to the post office, about a mile from my house. I walked fast, kept to the shadows, avoided the streetlights. I pick up an old bus ticket I've kept all these years. The station was just a small building with a ticket window and a few benches. And thank God, there was a bus leaving at 3:15 in the morning, headed to Nashville with stops in several towns along the way. Who sold you the ticket? An old man named Mr. Jessup. He was the night clerk, usually spent his shift reading Western paperbacks and drinking coffee from a thermos. I smile slightly. He looked at me, 16 years old, alone, carrying a small bag at 2:30 in the morning. And he knew I was running from something. What did he say? He said, "One way or round trip?" And I said, "One way." He nodded, didn't ask questions. Then he said, "That'll be $8 to Nashville." I gave him the money with shaking hands, and he gave me the ticket and said very quietly, "You got somebody waiting for you in Nashville?" And I lied, said yes. But you didn't. I didn't know a single soul in Nashville. I'd picked it because it was far enough away, but not so far that I couldn't afford the ticket. And because it was a city, big enough to disappear into, big enough that Tommy Whitfield couldn't find me even if he tried. I hold the ticket up. Mr. Jessup looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Good luck, young lady. Whatever you're running from, I hope you make it." Did anyone else come to the station? Not until right before the bus arrived. Then an older woman came in, carrying a suitcase, looking tired. She sat on the bench across from me and smiled. Said, "Traveling alone, dear?" And I nodded. She said, "Me too, visiting my sister in Chattanooga." And we sat in companionable silence until the bus pulled up. I stand and walk to the window. When I saw that Greyhound bus pull into the station, I felt this mix of terror and relief. Terror because I was really doing this, really leaving everything I'd ever known. Relief because every mile that bus took me would be a mile away from Tommy. What was the bus ride like? Long, uncomfortable. The bus was about half full, mostly working people. A few soldiers in uniform, a mother with 2 small children. I found a seat near the back, pressed myself against the window, and watched Cedar Falls disappear in the darkness. I turned back to Jenny, and I cried. Silently, so no one would hear. But I cried for miles. Cried for the life I'd thought I'd have. Cried for my mama who'd wake up and find me gone. Cried for the girl I used to be before Tommy Whitfield taught me what manipulation looked like. When did you stop crying? When the sun came up. We were somewhere in Tennessee by then, rolling past farmland and small towns that looked just like Cedar Falls. And I thought, I'm free. He can't find me. He can't hurt me anymore. And that thought was powerful enough to dry my tears. What happened when you got to Nashville? The bus pulled into the station around 9 in the morning. I got off with my little bag, stood in the middle of this big city, and had no idea what to do next. I sit back down. Nashville in 1969 was booming, country music everywhere, tourists, buildings going up. It was overwhelming for a small-town girl who'd never been anywhere. Where did you go first? I found a payphone and looked through the yellow pages for women's boarding houses. Back then, most cities had them. Respectable places where young women could rent a room by the week. Found one called the Magnolia House, got the address, asked someone for directions. I pull out a faded business card from the shoebox. Mrs. Velma Pritchard ran the Magnolia House. It was an old Victorian home converted into rooms for working girls. When I knocked on the door that morning, she took one look at me and knew exactly what I was, a runaway with no place to go. Did she turn you away? She should have. I was clearly underage, clearly running from something. But she didn't. I smile at the memory. She said, "How old are you, child?" And I lied, said I was 18. She didn't believe me, I could tell. But she said, "You got money for the first week?" And I said yes. She said, "Then come on in. But there are rules. No men in the rooms, no drinking, no drugs. You work during the day or you study, and you go to church on Sundays. Can you follow those rules?" You agreed. I would have agreed to anything. She showed me to a small room on the 3rd floor, just big enough for a single bed, a dresser, and a chair. But it had a lock on the door, a lock that worked from the inside. And that made it the safest place I'd ever been. How did you survive? How did you eat, work, live? Mrs. Pritchard helped me. She connected me with a diner down the street that needed a waitress. The owner, Mr. Clyde, didn't ask for identification, paid cash under the table. I started working the breakfast shift the next morning, 5 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, 6 days a week. I pull out a grease-stained order pad from the box. This was mine. I carried it in my apron pocket for 3 years. Look at these old orders: eggs over easy, bacon crispy, white toast. I memorized the menu in 1 day, learned to balance 4 plates at once, figured out that a smile got better tips even when my feet were killing me. That must have been exhausting. It was. But it was honest work, and it was mine. Nobody could take it away from me. Nobody could tell me I owed them something because they'd been patient with me. I traced the worn cover of the order pad, and slowly, very slowly, I started to build a life. Did you make friends? Eventually. The other waitresses at the diner were kind. Most of them were young women like me, working hard, trying to make something of themselves. We didn't pry into each other's pasts. We just showed up, did our work, supported each other. I smile. There was a girl named Ruby, about 20, who took me under her wing, taught me how to deal with difficult customers, how to stretch my tips to make them last, how to navigate the city safely. Did you ever think about going back? Every single day for the first month, I'd wake up in that little room and think, maybe I should just go home. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I overreacted. I look at Jenny seriously. But then I'd remember Tommy's face in that cabin, remember his threats, remember how trapped I'd felt, and I'd get up and go to work instead. Did your family try to find you? Mrs. Pritchard told me later that a man claiming to be my father had called the boarding house about 2 months after I arrived, but she told him she didn't have anyone by my name staying there, protected me without me even asking. I feel grateful even now. I don't know if it really was my daddy or if it was Tommy pretending to be him. Either way, after that, no one came looking. And you just started over. I started over. At 17 years old, in a city where nobody knew me, with $43 that became $35 after the bus ticket and first week's rent. I waitressed during the day, took night classes at the community center to finish my high school equivalency, saved every penny I could. You rebuilt yourself. I had to. There was no other choice. I look at the canvas bag, at all the artifacts of that journey. And the funny thing is, Tommy thought he was taking it slow, thought he was being patient, respectful, considerate. But he was running right over my boundaries, my voice, myself. So I had to run too, run faster and farther than he could follow. You saved yourself. I did. Because no one else was going to. I lived in Nashville for almost 10 years, I say, pulling out a stack of photographs from a different time in my life. 10 years of building something from nothing, of learning who Evelyn Carter was when she wasn't trying to please someone else. Jenny looks at the photos, me in a waitress uniform, me at a desk with books spread around me laughing with other young women. You look different in these, lighter somehow. I was lighter. The weight of pretending, of walking on eggshells, of being who Tommy wanted me to be, all of that was gone. I pick up one photo of me standing in front of a small apartment building. This was my first apartment. After 2 years at the Magnolia House, I'd saved enough to rent my own place. Just a studio with a hot plate and a shared bathroom down the hall, but it was mine. I signed the lease with my own name, paid the rent with my own money. Were you still waitressing? For a while? But I'd gotten my high school equivalency certificate and started taking night classes at Nashville State Community College, studied business administration because I wanted to understand how to manage money, how to be independent, how to never need to depend on anyone ever again. I show her another photo, me in a cap and gown. This was my graduation in 1973. 4 years of working full-time and studying at night. I was 21 years old. Did you celebrate? Ruby and some of the other girls from the diner took me out. We went to a restaurant, not fancy, but nicer than where we worked, and they toasted me with sweet tea and told me how proud they were. I smile at the memory. Ruby said, "You're going places, Evie. You're going to show all those people back home what they lost when they didn't believe you." Did anyone from Cedar Falls ever contact you? Once. In 1971, I got a letter forwarded through the Magnolia House. It was from my sister, Sarah. She was 14 when I left, and I guess she'd been asking Mrs. Pritchard questions, being persistent until Mrs. Pritchard finally agreed to pass along a letter. I pull the letter from the box, the paper thin from being read so many times. What did it say? I unfold it carefully and read parts aloud. "Dear Evie, I miss you so much. Mama cries sometimes when she thinks no one is watching. Daddy won't talk about you at all. They told everyone you went to live with an aunt, that you needed a fresh start. But I know that's not true. I know it has something to do with Tommy Whitfield because he got engaged to Mary Sue Henderson 6 months after you left. They got married last month. She's already pregnant. I wish you'd come home, but I understand if you can't. Please write back so I know you're alive. Love, Sarah." Jenny's eyes widen. He married someone else 6 months later? 6 months, and got her pregnant right away. Because he never wanted me specifically. He wanted ownership of someone, and I wouldn't be owned. I fold the letter back up. I wrote Sarah back, told her I was safe, working, going to school, asked her not to tell Mama and Daddy where I was. She kept writing me for years after that. That's how I learned that Tommy and Mary Sue's marriage was troubled, that he was controlling, that she looked thin and tired all the time. Did Mary Sue ever leave him? Eventually, yes. But not until after they had 3 kids and she'd endured 15 years of what I escaped from. By the time she finally divorced him in the mid-'80s, she was a shell of who she'd been. I shake my head. And the town blamed her, of course. Said she wasn't submissive enough. Said she'd broken a sacred vow. Never once questioned what Tommy had done to drive her away. That's infuriating. It is. But by then, I was long gone and building a life he couldn't touch. I pick up another photo, this one of me standing in an office. In 1974, I got hired as a secretary at an insurance company. It was my first real job, salary, benefits, respect. I wore professional clothes, worked regular hours, saved money in a bank account with just my name on it. You were doing well. I was surviving. And slowly I was starting to thrive. I show her more photos. I made friends, real friends who knew my story and didn't judge me. Women who'd also escaped bad situations, who understood what it meant to start over with nothing. Did you date anyone? Not for years. The thought of letting a man close to me again was terrifying. I'd go out with the girls, and if a man tried to talk to me, I'd freeze up. Ruby used to joke that I had a force field around me that repelled men. I smile sadly. But she understood. She'd escaped a bad marriage herself. When did that change? In 1977. I was 25 years old, working at the insurance company, living in a better apartment, finally feeling like I had solid ground under my feet. I pull out a photo of a kind-faced man with glasses and a gentle smile. This is James, Jim. He was a claims adjuster at the insurance company, quiet, steady, patient. How did you meet? We worked on the same floor. He'd come by my desk sometimes with paperwork, and he'd always say please and thank you. Always asked how my day was going and actually listened to the answer. Never pushy, never inappropriate. I touched the photo gently. After about 6 months of these small interactions, he left a note on my desk. It said, "Miss Carter, I'd like to take you to dinner sometime if you'd be interested. No pressure if you're not. Jim." What did you do? I panicked. Threw the note in the trash, avoided him for a week. I laugh at myself. But then he left another note. This one said, "I'm sorry if my invitation made you uncomfortable. That wasn't my intention. I hope we can still be friendly colleagues. Jim." He backed off. Completely. Went back to being polite but distant. And that's what made me trust him. Because Tommy would never have backed off. Tommy would have pushed, pressured, made me feel guilty for saying no. I look at Jenny. So, after about a month, I left a note on Jim's desk, said I'd changed my mind about dinner if the invitation was still open. And it was? It was. He took me to a modest restaurant, nothing fancy, and we talked for 3 hours. About books, about Nashville, about our jobs. He told me about growing up on a farm in Kentucky. I told him I was from Missouri, but I didn't give details. He didn't push for them. I smile at the memory. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car and said, "I had a really nice time. I'd like to do this again, but only if you want to. No pressure either way." And you wanted to. I did. Carefully, slowly. But I did. I show Jenny more photos, me and Jim at restaurants, at parks, at community events. We dated for 2 years before he even tried to kiss me. 2 years. And when he finally did, he asked first. Said, "Evie, I'd really like to kiss you if that's all right." And I said yes. And it was gentle and sweet, and nothing like the forceful, demanding kisses Tommy used to force on me. When did you tell him about Tommy? About a year into dating. We were having dinner at my apartment, and he mentioned that he'd like to meet my family someday. And I started crying, just burst into tears right there at the table. I wipe my eyes even now. And Jim didn't get frustrated or impatient. He just came around the table, knelt beside my chair, and said, "Whatever it is, you don't have to tell me unless you want to. But I'm here if you need to talk." So you told him. I told him everything. About Tommy, about the pressure, about running away at 16, about building this life from nothing, about how I'd been so broken I didn't think I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. I look at the photo of Jim, and you know what he said when I finished? What? He said, "Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me, and I want you to know, I will never make you feel like you owe me anything. I will never pressure you. I will never do what that man did to you. I'm not him, and I will spend as long as it takes proving that to you." Tears streamed down my face. And he did. He proved it every single day for the next 40 years. You married him. In 1980, I was 28, he was 30. We had a small wedding at a little church in Nashville. Ruby was my maid of honor. Some of the girls from the diner came. Jim's family came from Kentucky. They were kind, welcoming people who didn't ask uncomfortable questions about my past. I show her a wedding photo, me in a simple white dress, Jim in a suit, both of us smiling with genuine joy. And when the pastor said, "Do you take this man?" I said yes with my whole heart. Because I'd chosen him. Me. Not my parents, not my town, not some boy who thought patience was currency. Did you have kids? We did. Your mother was born in 1982, then your Uncle David in 1984. I show her photos of babies, toddlers, family Christmases. And I raised them differently. I taught your mother that her voice mattered, that no means no, that respect is shown through actions, not just words. I made sure she knew she never owed anyone her body, her time, or her future. Is that why Mom is so strong? That's why, because I broke the cycle. I didn't pass down the lessons I'd been taught about submission and silence. I taught her to be fierce, to trust her instincts, to run from anyone who made her feel small. I look at Jenny. And I thought I'd taught her to teach you the same things. That's why it breaks my heart to see you going through what I went through. With Brandon, who says he'll take it slow but doesn't, who makes promises he doesn't keep, who uses your feelings against you. I take both her hands. But there's one big difference between you and 16-year-old me. What's that? You have me. You have someone who believes you, who understands, who will help you get away from him before it gets worse. I squeeze her hands. You're not alone. And that changes everything. Jenny's been crying for the last 10 minutes, and I just hold her, letting her sob into my shoulder the way she used to when she was a little girl and had fallen off her bike or been hurt by mean kids at school. But this hurt is different, deeper, more dangerous. He does all of it, Grandma, she finally says, pulling back to look at me with red, swollen eyes. Everything you described. The pressure, the guilt trips, the threats disguised as concern. Last week, he went through my phone while I was in the shower. When I got upset, he said if I didn't have anything to hide, I shouldn't mind. That's invasion of privacy. That's control. I know that now. But he made it sound so reasonable. Said couples should be transparent with each other, that my anger proved I was hiding something. She wipes her face with her sleeve. And then yesterday, he told me he'd booked us a hotel room for next weekend. Didn't ask, just told me. Said we'd been dating 8 months and it was time to take things to the next level. My stomach tightens with familiar rage. What did you say? I said I wasn't ready, that I wanted to wait. And he got that look, that same hurt, disappointed look you described Tommy having. Said, Jenny, I've been so patient with you. I've respected your boundaries. But there's patient and then there's ridiculous. What are you waiting for? Those exact words, almost verbatim to what Tommy said to me. I stand up and pace, furious that this is still happening, that 56 years later, boys are still using the same manipulative tactics. And let me guess, he made it sound like you owed him something for his patience. Yes, he said, I could be with girls who are more willing, but I chose you. I've invested 8 months in this relationship. Don't I deserve something for that? Jenny's voice breaks. And I started to think maybe he was right. Maybe I am being unreasonable. Everyone my age is having sex. Maybe I'm just being, stop. I kneel in front of her, looking into her eyes. Don't you dare finish that sentence. You are not being unreasonable. You are not being ridiculous. You are listening to your gut, which is telling you that something is wrong, and your gut is right. But what if I am overreacting? What if he's just frustrated and I'm making it into something bigger than it is? Listen to me very carefully. I take her face in my hands. When someone really respects you, really cares about you, they don't get frustrated when you say no. They don't keep score of how long they've waited. They don't make you feel guilty for having boundaries. Jim waited 2 years to kiss me. 2 years and never once complained. Never once made me feel like I owed him something for his patience. But Brandon says all guys are like this, that his friends say their girlfriends, Brandon is lying, and even if some guys are like this, that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't mean you have to accept it. I sit back down beside her. You know what the biggest difference between you and me is? What? You recognized it after 8 months. It took me over a year, and by then I was so deep in his manipulation that I couldn't see a way out without running away from everything. I pick up the shoebox, hold it between us. But you have options I didn't have. You're in college, living in a dorm, financially independent through your scholarships and part-time job. You're not trapped in a small town where everyone sides with him. You can walk away. I don't know if I can. Every time I think about breaking up with him, I get so anxious. What if he's right about me? What if no one else wants to deal with my issues? What if... Those are his words in your head, not yours. I open the shoebox and show her everything. The photos, the notes, the diary entries, the bus ticket. This is what happens when you ignore that voice inside that's screaming something is wrong. This is what happens when you let someone convince you that your feelings don't matter. I ran away at 16 with $43 and never saw my family again. My mother died in 1989, and I didn't even know until Sarah called me 3 days after the funeral. Jenny gasps. You never told me that. Because it was too painful, too shameful. I'd spent 20 years away, building a life, raising your mother, and I never went home. Never reconciled with my parents. My daddy died in 1995, and by then Sarah couldn't even find me because I'd moved here to Cedar Falls. Yes, back to this town, after Jim retired. I wipe my eyes. I came back because I needed to prove to myself that I'd survived, that Tommy Whitfield hadn't broken me, that I could walk these streets without fear. Did you ever see him again? Once, about 15 years ago. I was at the grocery store, and he was there with his third wife. Yes, third, after Mary Sue and another woman in between. He was old by then, overweight, walking with a cane. And he looked at me, and I could see he recognized me, could see him trying to place where he knew me from. Did he say anything? He started to approach me, but I just turned and walked away. Didn't give him the satisfaction of acknowledging him. Didn't give him any power over me at all. I smile grimly. But my hand shook for an hour afterward, because even at 63 years old, seeing him brought back all that fear, all that pain. I'm so sorry, Grandma. Don't be sorry for me. Be smart for yourself. I closed the shoebox and set it on the coffee table. This is why I'm telling you everything. Why I finally opened this box after 56 years. Because when you called me yesterday and told me about Brandon, I heard something in your voice that I recognized. That same confusion, that same self-doubt, that same feeling of being trapped in something you can't quite name. What do? You break up with him, today, right now. I pull out my phone. You call him or text him, I don't care which, and you say, this relationship isn't working for me, I'm ending it. Please don't contact me again. And then you block him on everything. He'll be so angry. He'll tell everyone I'm crazy, that I led him on. Let him. Your real friends will believe you, and the ones who don't believe you aren't your real friends anyway. I hand her my phone. You can use my phone if you want, or yours. But you're doing this now, while I'm here with you, while you have support. Jenny takes the phone with shaking hands. What if I can't? What if I'm too scared? Then I'll help you. I'll sit right here while you do it. And afterward, we'll block him together. And if he shows up at your dorm or tries to contact you, we'll go to campus security. We'll file a restraining order if we have to. We'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. I put my arm around her. You are not alone in this. You have me. You have your mother. You have resources that didn't exist when I was your age. You can do this. She sits there for a long moment, staring at the phone. Then she takes a deep breath and opens her messaging app. Her fingers hover over the keyboard. I don't know what to say. Say what you need to say, short and clear. Don't explain, don't apologize, don't justify, just state the fact. She types slowly. Brandon, I'm ending our relationship. Please don't contact me anymore. Good. Now send it before you second-guess yourself. She hits send, and I watch the message go through. Then immediately, her phone starts buzzing with incoming calls. Brandon's name flashing on the screen. Don't answer, I say firmly. Let me show you how to block him. We go through her phone together, blocking his number, blocking him on social media, blocking his email. With each block, I see her breathing get a little easier, her shoulders relax a little more. He's going to find other ways to contact me, she says. Probably, and when he does, you don't engage. You document everything and you tell someone, me, your mother, campus security. You don't handle this alone. I pull her close. Promise me you won't handle this alone. I promise. She starts crying again, but different tears this time. Relief tears. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for telling me your story. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for helping me see that I'm not crazy. You were never crazy. You were just caught in the same trap that's caught countless women before you. But you got out after 8 months instead of 8 years. That's victory. We sit together on the couch, surrounded by the contents of that old shoebox, all the evidence of my pain, my survival, my escape, and I realize that these objects aren't shameful relics anymore. They're tools, teaching tools, proof that survival is possible, that starting over is possible, that a life built on your own terms is possible. What will you do with all this now? Jenny asks, gesturing to the photos and letters. Keep it visible, right here on this shelf. I pick up the shoebox, hold it for a moment, then place it on the bookshelf where anyone can see it. I hid it for 56 years because I was ashamed, but I'm not ashamed anymore. I'm proud. Proud that I survived. Proud that I built a good life. Proud that my story might help you and other young women who need to hear it. You should write it down. Share it more widely. Maybe I will. Maybe that's what these old bones are meant to do in whatever time I have left. Tell the truth about what "I'll take it slow" really meant when boys like Tommy Whitfield said it. I look at her seriously. But what matters most right now is that you're safe, that you're free, that you didn't let Brandon take from you what Tommy almost took from me. Jenny hugs me tight. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweet girl. Now let's call your mother and tell her what happened. She deserves to know, and you deserve all the support we can give you. As Jenny makes the call, I look at that shoebox on the shelf, visible now for the first time in over 50 years. And I think about that terrified 16-year-old girl who climbed out her bedroom window with $43 and a dream of freedom. She made it. We made it. And now, maybe, her story can help others make it too. He said he'd take it slow, but he didn't. And I survived anyway, and so will you.